Hello and welcome, folks, to The Freelancer. This podcast discusses all things publishing through a social justice lens. My name is Andy Hodges. I'm a cultural anthropologist turned fiction writer and editor, and I own a book editing business called The Narrative Craft. Make sure you subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode, and sign up for my fortnightly newsletter in the show notes if you want more regular updates. And welcome to the very first episode of Season 2. And today, I have a wonderful guest, the book coach and editor, Karen Parker, who is based in LA, if I'm not mistaken.
That is correct.
Is that right? Wonderful. And we are going to be chatting about decolonizing fiction craft. So my first question, just to get things going, is how does colonialism show up in fiction craft and in fiction itself? And can you give some examples?
Absolutely. And thank you for having me, Andy. I love being on this podcast already. And we're coming in with colonialism.
Yeah, we are.
Big, bad, scary, evil things. So how I answer this question is it's all about recontextualization. Because as I mentioned in my 60-second book coach series on Instagram and YouTube, the hero's journey is the colonizer's journey. And nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to talk about how at the dawn of humanity, we were oral storytellers, minding our own business, preserving histories, passing down culture from generation to generation, and just enjoying community. Like, we were fine. We were fine before Columbus showed up, okay? But when colonizers rolled up onto the scene, they used the written word to create unjust laws, create exclusionary canon, and to just promote a story structure like the hero's journey or even like similar stories to that to justify exploring other lands and exploiting their people. And so storytelling, as I mentioned in my pen and paper course, is a kind of magic. It is a kind of way to bewitch and beguile people.
Yay. I love
for good
that.
and for evil. And so in particular with colonialism and in fiction craft, it's more, I would say that it's a very endemic manipulation of politics and of culture and gender and all of these things enmeshed together. And it shows up still in the way that we're taught how to write stories in school, especially in Western schools. Like, we don't talk about Eastern storytelling structure. We only talk about Aristotelian structure with the introduction or the exposition and the climax and the resolution. We are only given these things, and we are given a very narrow field of context. But when you decolonize craft, you widen that field and you recontextualize things.
That's really cool. And the hero's journey, that's one thing that I've been thinking about. And it's also embedded in like cultural anthropology as well. Which is historically also been incredibly colonizing. And it's everywhere in spec fic, in fantasy and science fiction, The Hobbit, etc. All kinds of books. So imagine that I've written a novel and then I see it's got the hero's journey in it and I'm like, I don't want to write that kind of novel, but what do I do? What advice would you give me?
Right.
Yeah.
So I've just dropped this absolute bombshell of like the hero's journey is the colonizer's journey. Therefore, you must be a colonizer. No, that's not what I said. That's not what I said. So first of all, don't panic. If your story fits the mold of the hero's journey, if it just works, if that is the story that you are trying to tell about someone who goes on an adventure and learns something new, has a mentor, explores this other place. I mean, that's life. That's what happens. What gets tricky about the hero's journey is that it has been misused, or that it has been used to justify so much harm and so much wrong throughout history. So if your story does not perpetuate that harm, then I would say you're A-okay, but it would be still good to think about it. And if there is a chance that your story fits into a different structure, or fits a different perspective, or is talking about things outside of a Western framework, absolutely explore that. There's this amazing story structure chart that I love to cite that's on Reddit. And I think the Redditor's name is Too Much B.
Ooh, we'll link to it in the show notes.
Please link to that in the show notes, because it's an amazing chart. It has the scientific method on it. It has the Japanese storytelling framework, Kisho Tenketsu, which I had to learn in my Japanese class when I was writing essays in Japanese, of all things. And it also has a bunch of storytelling structures from Kurt Vonnegut. I think my favorite one is like, everything is bad, it gets worse and worse and worse. So yeah, it really depends on the story that you want to tell. Yeah, that's also something I want writers to watch out for, is that when you're going on your decolonizing journey, you're going to come up against a lot of like, some negative things, or things that make you kind of question, like, what are you doing to uphold these systems? But also, like, there's internalized shaming and programming that you ought to kind of cast off while you're doing that too, because that's how colonialism gets to you. It puts you in that box and makes you think that you're a bad person, and tries to like shove you the other way, shove you toward colonialism. And so, yeah, that would be my big thing, to not panic, and to kind of widen your horizons, and just be mindful, and just, like, keep in mind the story that you want to tell at the forefront.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess that writing in community with others is also really helpful.
Yes,
with
absolutely.
And doing some of that.
Absolutely. Writing is a very solitary activity. Even having like a monthly call with another writer friend, or going to writing conferences, just anything that can get you outside of your own head for just a little bit is super, super crucial.
Okay. On to the next question now. And it's another really big question, really difficult question.
I like heavy hitters.
So we've talked about colonialism. How does capitalism show up in fiction craft and in novels? Yeah.
So capitalism and colonialism are bosom buddies. And I know that you and I kind of differ in opinion on like the origins of capitalism, but I kind of like to think that writing is the birthplace of like capitalistic tendencies as well as political resistance. So we have, like, through cave paintings, the first evidence of humans like writing or proto-writing being in response to them wanting to understand the natural world and its cycles. And there's this article, which I'm probably going to ask you to put in the show notes again, about this amateur archaeologist named Ben Bacon, who discovered through his research on the cave paintings that these markings were meant to maybe record the mating cycles of certain animals. And so really, like, we were in communion with nature from the very beginning, and writing has, that specific tie to nature and to spellcraft and to magic and all of this religious stuff. But fast forward a few thousand years, where you start to look at the ancient Egyptians and their hieroglyphs and sort of the beginnings of what would become our alphabet, we start to get measurements and taxes, and the capitalistic tendency becomes a gateway for people to start thinking, I have more and you have less. I'm the better king and you're the lesser king. You're the lord. You're beneath me. And so there's that concreteness of measurement and of power and, relation to nature with grain or taxes or whatever. And then there was that article I can't quite remember right now. I think it's Orly something or other, but she posited that the Canaanite miners in ancient Egypt invented a more simplified writing system in response to not having access to the level of education that Egyptian scribes up at the top had. And so, like, in direct contrast to like all of the nobility with their education and the I have more and you have less, the people at the bottom or at the lower class were like, nah, we gotta simplify this. We gotta make it easier to talk to each other and to communicate with each other. That's kind of my theory. Like, I'd have to talk to an actual anthropologist or a historian to kind of confirm or deny this. But that's what I'm generally talking about with capitalism in just writing. In terms of fiction craft, that's kind of I would say that sort of ties into just the traditional publishing model, and how traditional publishing just likes to buy and sell books that they know will sell well. Like, I tell people all the time that, like, traditional publishing favors books that are similar enough to what they already have, but different enough to where it's not completely the same. And to strike that balance is really, really hard. And capitalism just makes it worse, because the canon that we see in all of these like traditional imprints, guess who the authors are? They're mostly white. They're mostly cisgender. And they're mosely heterosexual. And so it's this recursion or this feedback loop of like, we want something similar to what's already been written, but we want it to be just different enough. Is it really different though? But yeah, that's kind of a broad overview.
Okay, yeah, I could talk about this for hours, like how capitalism shows up in traditional publishing. Things get cycled on repeat, like also the film industry, I think, is quite similar in this respect. We've got a new Superman film out right now. These are things that will bring in crowds. You have things like the celebrity author tendency. If you already have a massive audience, then it's much easier to get a book out. And I think my impression is that the broad approach in TradPub is a kind of scattergun or lottery approach. Like, so they'll try and cover lots of different bases, and they probably won't make much money on most of those books. Some of them will turn a small profit, but just now and again there'll be an author that makes loads and loads of money for them, and that's where they make their money, I think.
And so, just to riff on what you're going off of the both the film industry and the publishing industry with regard to like the scattergun approach. This is my hot take right now. I'm sorry, but like I'm tired of superhero movies. I'm just tired of them. How many Spider-Man movies have been made in the last 2 decades? I mean, apart from Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse and that whole series, like I'm okay with that because I like Miles Morales. I like a black Afro-Latino Spider-Man. And I like the diversity that is included in that. Like, that is a new direction that I welcome, but it is still a Spider-Man movie. And then also in traditional publishing, my specialty is speculative fiction, and speculative fiction written from BIPOC and LGBTQ perspectives. And one of the things I'm noticing in traditional publishing right now is that there is a huge sort of like wave of not romantasy. Like some of y'all were thinking romantasy, and I was going to say that, but I wasn't. I was gonna say mythological retellings. Like mythological retellings on the YA side and on the adult side, and I think that's cool, and it's been done before. Like I think like Madeline Miller's Circe or Kirke broke that open and like just pushed the door open and let all of that kind of work kind of come in because it was such a huge blockbuster. But now my worry is that there are going to be authors out there who are going to be like racing to be the next or be the first person to like talk about this god or be the person that talks about this certain culture. And I'm worried that there's going to be like this wave is sort of like feeding on itself through possible tokenization, even though I'm all for diversity and like looking at like new perspectives. But I'm worried that it's going to start being like, every publisher is going to start wanting to look at their backlist and see if they have their own Forged by Blood or Children of Blood and Bone title or their own sort of Egyptian god title. And it's just going to be like, we're going to see that same but differentness again. And I am a little worried about that, but I'm like, I do want to hear more perspectives. But yeah, that's a trend that I am a little bit worried about. And capitalism is definitely fueling it. Okay.
So is there anything positive that you see happening in traditional like Big Five publishing at the moment?
I think, well, my first instinct is there's not a lot in the traditional publishing space that it looks to be positive right now. We have but I would say though to not give up hope for this industry because we did see the needle move a little bit with the Black Lives Matter movement and the hashtag publishing paid me. But I feel like that needle has since moved back to where it was in the wake of like the 2024 presidential election. And I'm also speaking for the US publishing industry. I don't know what it's like over there in the UK, but I'm sure that, with Simon & Schuster and the Big Five or the Big Four or whoever they are now, if they all haven't bought each other out by this point, I believe that their decisions have had ripple effects across, the whole English speaking or however, that publishing landscape. And also traditional publishing offers writer support and networking that they didn't get right away with independently publishing. And I think that's only because the system is currently set up that way. If there were more, traditional publishing houses and the power was like broken up just a little bit, I think we would all be cool. But because the power is so concentrated in in New York and with, these handful of publishing companies with their imprints, it just gets it gets a little bit too big. So I would say that, again, if you're pursuing traditional publishing, or you're hearing this and you're like, I don't want to be complicit in the system, that's cool. But that's still an available option for you if you want to do that. Like, I don't want to be the one to tell you, like, don't do this or don't do that. Like, it's your life. It's your life. It's your book. You get to decide where you want its home to be. And I think that underneath, deciding where you want your book to land, also move the needle with enough pressure. You could be strategic about it and talk about these things, help other writers. Like, once you've crossed that door and, you're in the room where it happens, tell other people what happens in the room where it happens. It's almost like you're making your own little whisper network.
Yeah, this reminds me of one of the main themes that I took from your pen and paper course, which was on decolonizing fiction craft.
Yes.
About finding the middle ground.
Yes.
In traditional publishing. So could you explain that just in a sentence or two?
Yeah. So the middle ground, for all you Buddhists out there, if you caught that, I'm a secular Buddhist. And so I try to bring a secular Buddhist approach to writing and decolonization, and just hopefully kind of have that triple Venn diagram going. And what I love about the middle path is that it doesn't tell you necessarily what to do or what not to do. It says, here are some things that might keep you balanced. If you want to leverage the power of a traditional publishing market while also helping out your community, you can do that. And if you want to self-publish one book and traditionally publish another, you can do that. And you don't have to feel caught in one or the other, or binary thinking that both traditional publishing wants you to think is my way or the highway. And also what colonialism wants you to think, that, because if you're complicit in this, this system, then something must be wrong with you. No, you're just playing the game.
Yeah.
And it's okay to play the game. It's completely fine to see what works for you and what doesn't. I have a self-published short story collection, and I love the fact that I did that, because for me, it reminds me that I can do this on my own. But for this other novel that I'm working on, which is my MFA thesis that I'm querying, that one I know definitively has a larger audience because I'm pitching it a certain way. So it's really just trying to maintain your spiritual center or your political center or your center of gravity, I think. That wasn't one sentence, I'm sorry, but I think that explains.
That is super wise. And as a non-secular Buddhist, I totally approve. Okay, so we've touched a little bit on tips. If there were a few tips that you'd give to a BIPOC or Quilt Bag Plus writer trying to get published traditionally, what would they be?
So,
and I'm listening. Yeah.
Asking for a friend. So I have two answers to this. My big three, if you just want them, is to read a lot, write a lot, talk a lot. Read from other perspectives. Read until you can't read no more. Read until, read past when they start banning entire books, which they're already doing. Yep. Write a lot. Write in your journal. Write. And don't necessarily think that with writing you are limited to just pen and paper or fingers to keyboard. You can, orally dictate something, whatever writing means to you. Be in the act of creation, and then talk a lot. Be in community. Yeah. Be on forums. Volunteer or join a couple of organizations so that you can attend a webinar and ask those questions to those industry professionals. Maybe even join an MFA program where you make writer friends potentially for life. And if you don't want to join an MFA program, there are people out there. You're not alone in this. And then the second version, or the second answer I have, is for the Buddhists out there, or for those who might be more interested in Buddhist philosophy. I've kind of taken a bit of Buddhism and kind of put it into 7 things that I believe are needed to create a sustainable, firm, but flexible writing practice. and each of those 7 things I feel like can be seen in Buddhism as well. And so those 7 things, which I talk about on my podcast, the Immovable Wisdom Writing Podcast, are curiosity, consciousness, compassion, candor, creativity, community, and calm. Basically, be curious, be self-aware, don't be numb. Be compassionate with other writers. Be candid. Don't hold back. As I tell Andy and my coaching clients, go ham. Like, don't.
Yeah, that's
back.
a big one.
Yeah, that's a big one. Creativity, meaning, be flexible but firm. Like, understand what your boundaries are, what your yeses and nos are, and don't feel like you have to be just one thing. Don't be super rigid. Be in community. Like, there's a reason why Buddhist monks all gather in Sangha in community, because you need a practice like this. You need to be around other people. And then calm, just being, once you have all of those pieces in place, just stay centered and focused and not given to aversions like greed or hatred or anything that throws you off course. I don't know the order that you would put those 7 things in, but those are the 7 things that I know of.
Okay. And that might be a different order for everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so we've touched a little bit on MFA programs, and they are linked to academia, which is also this kind of big, scary system that has historically been involved in colonialism and capitalism. What I think all of that means is that you might potentially, as a BIPOC or Quilt Bag Plus writer, pick the wrong MFA program, and if you did, there might be some oppressive practices. You might have problems. There could be, I don't know, I've seen things like ritual shaming in academic contexts and things like that. What are your thoughts on this? Are there any liberatory ways of organizing an MFA or a fiction writers workshop?
Absolutely. For one, all of you need to read Felicia Rose Chavez's The Anti-Racist Writing Workshop, because it answers those questions. And
going in the show notes.
Yeah, going in the show. Like, your show notes are going to be stuffed, but
great book.
Yeah, absolutely phenomenal book. I wish I could give it like 6 out of 5 stars, because Felicia Rose Chavez just breaks down her time in the University of Iowa's MFA program, her experience with it as a Latina writer, and also gives resources and exercises and, like, I think whole syllabi just to show a different way a writing class can be run. And the big thing also on a technical level with writing workshops is that the traditional method forces you to sit in silence while others are talking about your work. And that can be incredibly traumatizing for a writer of color or an LGBTQ plus writer, especially when you're writing about things that are not of the dominant paradigm or the dominant culture within that, little classroom bubble. And you can't advocate for yourself, or you can't talk about these things. And the idea behind sitting in silence during the workshop, or that tradition, comes from this sort of like, there might be some benefit to it if like you're quick to react, or quick to like jump up and say something, and you don't have that active listening, and you're a little too spicy at the moment. But in general, I found it to be a really, really oppressive practice to use that model. And so Clarion West's website has much more equitable models. I have facilitated a workshop based on the conversation interview model. And I have been workshopped in the conversation interview model, which was developed by Nalo Hopkinson. And that model I really like, because it sort of simulates being kind of like being a writer at a panel, and you get questions and you get to answer those questions. And in answering those questions and verbalizing things, I'm able to understand, like, I could take that story in a different direction than I thought I would. Or like, oh, you noticed that? Yes. Like, there's a conversation. There's the sense of like, I own this work, but I also understand that certain things might not be coming across the way that I intend. And there's just that shared mutual understanding, rather than like, in the traditional way where you're kind of like a frog on a table being dissected for everybody. It's so much better. So those 2 things, the Clarion West website and Felicia Rose Chavez's book.
Yeah, that's like critique in, I don't know, maybe in the worst sense of the word, but if you're a new author, especially, I think lots of new authors struggle with confidence when talking about their writing projects, and being able to have this kind of this supportive environment where you're basically being interviewed about your book.
Yes.
That I think that could be incredibly empowering for overcoming those confidence blocks and just feeling comfortable talking about your story and your story world, so that you feel kind of more at ease. And all of these processes, which I've experienced firsthand, you gradually hold back less
Yes.
when you feel much more comfortable and confident talking about these things.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay, so to finish off, we've talked about, well, we've opened loads of really big, important topics here, and opened a few cans of worms. And
yes, Pandora's boxes, all the things.
Exactly. And you've said that one option is going away and doing an MFA program, some kind of writer's workshop, but you also have a coaching program which covers loads of these points.
I do. Yes.
Yeah. So I wondered if you could just talk a little bit about that for
absolutely.
a few minutes.
So
yeah.
It is as of when this will be recorded, it's currently in its pilot state, so doing a bit of research, but I will eventually call it in the future the Immovable Wisdom Book Coaching Program. And basically the big three things, because I'm a fan of threes, the big three things of the coaching program are that it helps you plan your novel, polish your novel, and pitch your novel. So the Pencil and Eraser course is based on the Blueprint for Your Novel Framework by Jenny Nash. I'm an Author Accelerator certified book coach, and that is the method that we use. It is a 14-step blueprint with an optional 15th step for world building, which is great for speculative fiction writers who I work with. And I've found that the blueprint really helps you. It saves you from having to write draft after draft after draft and getting lost in the weeds. And it helps you, it basically helps you create your story Bible without you creating like a world building Bible that you also get lost in. It helps you narrow your point down. It helps you make jacket copy. And it really helps you stay grounded when you get lost in the writing process. Like instead of like writing a huge novel and then having to wrangle it into submission when you're revising, you just have.
Which is so common.
Yeah. Which is super
with new authors.
common.
Yeah.
Yeah, it happened with me, and it's not going to happen as frequently because now I have this method. So that is the method I teach in the Pencil and Eraser course, which is from January to March. And then the Pen and Paper course, which just finished, is about polishing your novel or polishing your novel in a decolonial way, because I think that so many writers make the same mistakes over and over again because they haven't been taught the proper context. They've just had Western storytelling tradition thrust upon them. They don't understand that they might gravitate towards certain stories because of, history that was never explained to them. And so I'm biased. Like the Pen and Paper course is my favorite because it's really the heart of.
It's amazing. I really
thank you.
I was involved in the pilot phase and I loved it. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. And yeah, it's super dense, and it kind of just talks about the things that I wished had been talked about in my MFA programs and my undergraduate programs. It's what I want people to know. And then the Pen and Paper course is also from May to July. And the Quill and Ink course is it's the pitch your novel course. So I talk about traditional publishing, I talk about literary agents, how to build a literary life, and the business side of things. Might not get too much into decoloniality, but that's really like, final level hard boss. Like we'll be looking at your log line and your query letter and your synopsis, and I'm going to put on my hat and be like, you're about to step into this ring, and it's going to be hard, but this is the kind of work that you'll be doing to prepare for that life. And so that course is actually coming up. It'll be from September to November, and that's
awesome.
a year. That is a year-long program.
Awesome, yeah. And I had a look at the program as well. You're going to be working with Jane Friedman's book. Is it called The Business of Being a Writer? Is that right?
That is right. And I read the first edition a long time ago, and it kind of like went in one ear out the other. But the second edition was just published, I think, in April, and it's really, really good. It's so It's chock full of detail and experience, and I'm going to be kind of referencing that for the Quill and Ink course because, like, Jane Friedman has been in the industry for a long time and knows what she's talking about. So that's going to be kind of like our anchor text. Again, Quill and Ink is more the advocate and the pitch side. This is the this is the course where you learn how to take the punch. I hate that. How it sounds like violent, but it's a tough world out there in the traditional publishing world.
It is. Yeah. I mean, self-publishing is as well, but it's a different game. Different game. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And for myself, once upon a time, I thought, I might give self-publishing a go. And then I thought, not really into that kind of marketing and wearing all of those different hats.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized, well, actually, for traditional publishing, it's just a different kind of marketing, the whole pitch system.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, and you still wear hats. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's just how many hats do you want to wear? Yes.
Yeah, and more these days as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of books don't have a big marketing budget, and you can end up doing loads of that yourself. Mm-hmm. So, okay. Do you have any final messages as we wrap up this wonderful episode for our listeners?
First of all, thank you again for having me. I love talking about this stuff. Like, I eat and live and breathe this stuff. And for those who want to keep in touch, please do visit me at KarenAParker.com. I have a blog, which is also a newsletter if you want to subscribe to it and have it land in your email inbox. I also have a few videos on YouTube and Instagram. The current series that I'm working on is a 60-second book coach. So if you want to do like a little preview or snippets of like what I talk about in my coaching courses or just potential future workshops, that would be a good place to start. They're only 60 seconds long. And I also have a podcast that I am trying to get off the ground. It is the Immovable Wisdom Writing Podcast, which just launched on August 1st. And I will try and have the next episode up soon. But that podcast is where I talk more about the Buddhist side of things and how Buddhism and the stuff that I mentioned before with like curiosity and candor and creativity and calm, how I fit those pieces together with a writing practice. Because that was another thing that I've discovered in being an entrepreneur. As I was articulating my perspective, I was realizing that like some people might not be ready for book coaching or editing because they don't have the right practices in place to be centered and calm and recontextualized. And so that podcast, I hope, will serve as like a, if you're not ready for this huge undertaking, like get right with yourself first. And I'm also thinking of doing a mentorship, but that's like also that's way in the future. So just those things to start if you want to keep in touch.
Okay. All right. And Karen will be back in 2 episodes' time where we'll be discussing other things. We'll be talking all about our own writing projects and editing work and how it all fits together, what it's like being an editor who also writes.
Indeed.
So, yeah. So thank you, folks, for listening. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes. And this week, there will be a lot of stuff in those show notes. Loads of useful links. If you want to keep in touch, sign up for my newsletter. Otherwise, I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe to this podcast and rate and review it. And that's it for this week. Until next time.